The embers of Kyoto were still glowing when Japan slipped into its longest, bloodiest, and most magnificent age, the Sengoku Jidai, the era of the country at war. For 150 years the land knew no peace, only the ceaseless clash of steel, the thunder of hooves, and the cries of men who believed their names would echo forever. The Onin War had torn the old order to pieces. The Ashikaga shoguns were reduced to shadows, the imperial court to a beautiful puppet, and the capital itself to blackened ruins. In the vacuum rose a new breed of warlord, the daimyo, great names, men who carved kingdoms from the smoke and swore that their banners would one day fly over the whole realm. In the jagged mountains of Kai province, a tiger prowled. Takeda Shingen, crimson armor blazing like the sun itself, led his 24 generals and 10,000 horsemen down the narrow passes of Konakajima, where the rivers ran red 4 times with the blood of his eternal rival, Uesugi Kenshin, the dragon of Ichigo. Kenshin, clad in the blue of a mountain sky, would descend from his snowy fortress at Kasugayama, with monks chanting sutras behind him, and the 2 gods of war would meet in single combat beneath a storm of arrows, their blades flashing like lightning frozen in steel. Far to the northeast, a one-eyed dragon stirred. Date Masamune, the crescent moon emblazoned on his black armor, rode out from Sendai with a roar that silenced the wind. His cavalry charged wearing grotesque helmets shaped like demons, their matchlocks spitting fire and smoke long before the enemy knew they were even there. War changed its face in those years. The old samurai ideal of the lone hero on horseback gave way to something colder, more terrible, and infinitely more effective. The Ashigaru, the light feet, once little more than peasants with bamboo spears, were drilled into disciplined squares that could loose 3,000 arrows in a single heartbeat, then drop their bows, lock their 12-foot spears into a forest of steel, and hold the line while the matchlocks behind them reloaded. In 1543, a storm-tossed Chinese junk limped into the tiny island of Tanegashima, carrying 3 Portuguese adventurers and their long, strange guns. Within months, the smiths of Sakai and Kunitomo were hammering out copies by the thousand. The arquebus, the teppo, had arrived. At first, the samurai laughed at the clumsy, rain-sensitive weapons, but laughter died on the field of Nagashino in 1575. There, beneath the wooden palisades of Tsutsujigasaki Castle, Oda Nobunaga, the Demon King, unveiled his masterpiece. 3,000 gunners stood in 3 rotating ranks behind a flimsy wooden fence. When Takeda Katsuyori's legendary cavalry, the finest horsemen in Japan, thundered forward in a scarlet avalanche, Nobunaga simply raised his fan. Rank 1 fired. Rank 1 knelt to reload. Rank 2 fired. Rank 2 knelt. Rank 3 fired. A rolling thunder that never ceased. For 10 minutes, the pride of Kai charged into a wall of lead and smoke. When the haze cleared, the flower of the Takeda cavalry lay broken on the blood-soaked grass, and the age of the night was over. Nobunaga himself never saw the final victory. In the summer of 1582, in the Golden Temple of Honnoji, his own general Akechi Mitsuhide turned traitor. Flames licked the lacquered beams as Nobunaga, refusing to be taken alive, performed seppuku amid the roar of burning wood. His last words are said to have been, "Is this the end of ambition?" But ambition does not die so easily. From the ashes rose a man who had begun life as a sandal bearer, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, The monkey-faced peasant who had clawed his way to the top with nothing but cunning and a smile sharp enough to cut steel. Within 13 days of Hanno-ji, he avenged his lord at the Battle of Yamazaki, cutting down Mitsuhide beneath a summer moon. The following year, on the pine-covered hills of Shizugataki, he shattered the last of Nobunaga's old generals and declared himself master of central Japan. One by one, the great names fell or knelt. In 1584, Tokugawa Ieyasu, the patient old badger of Mikawa, met Hideyoshi at Nagakute and fought him to a bloody draw. Rather than waste more lives, Ieyasu bent the knee, but his eyes never lost their calculating glint. In 1585, Hideyoshi crossed the inland sea and crushed the Chosakabe of Shikoku. In 1587, he sailed south with 100,000 men and forced the proud Shimazu of Satsuma to their knees beneath the walls of Kagoshima. In 1590, he marched north and starved the Hojo into surrender at Odawara, their mighty castle reduced to rubble beneath a rain of iron cannonballs. By 1591, the last northern warlord, Date Masamune himself, rode to Kyoto and laid his sword at Hideyoshi's feet. Japan was one land again, ruled by a man born with nothing. Yet even Hideyoshi could not escape the hunger that devours all conquerors. In 1592, he looked across the sea to the vast empire of Ming China and dreamed the impossible dream. 500,000 Japanese crossed to Korea in a fleet that darkened the horizon. For 6 years, they fought beneath crimson suns, against the ironclad turtle ships of Admiral Yi Sun-sin, against endless Chinese armies, against Korean guerrillas who struck from mountain shadows and vanished like smoke. In the end, they gained nothing but graves. In 1598, as the last ships limped home, Hideyoshi died in a Kyoto palace, whispering to his infant son Hideyori to protect what I have built. He should have known better. The moment the Taiko's breath stopped, the fragile peace shattered. Daimyo chose sides. Some swore loyalty to the child Hideyori and the Toyotomi name. Others looked to the east, to the old badger who had waited half a lifetime for this moment. Tokugawa Ieyasu. On the morning of the 15th day of the 9th month of the year 1600, 60,000 men of the Eastern Army faced 50,000 of the Western Army across the narrow Nakasendo Road at Sekigahara. Fog lay thick on the fields. Drums beat like heartbeats. Then Kobayakawa Hideaki, whose banner flew with the Western forces, turned his guns on his own allies. The betrayal broke the Western line like a sword through silk. By noon the mist had lifted to reveal a battlefield carpeted with the dead. Ieyasu rode forward, removed his helmet, and let the wind cool the sweat on his brow. He was 58 years old, and at last the realm was his. 3 years later, he took the title his Minamoto blood allowed him. Sei Shogun, the Tokugawa shogunate, was born. Yet one last spark of the old fire remained. In 1614, the boy Hideyori, now a young man, gathered the masterless Ronin and the desperate in the impregnable fortress of Osaka Castle. Ieyasu came with 200,000 men through the bitter winter of 1614 and the burning summer of 1615. The greatest siege in Japanese history raged. Cannonballs the size of a man's head smashed against the triple moats and soaring stone walls. In the final assault, Sanada Yukimura, the Crimson Demon of the West, led a desperate charge straight at Ieyasu's headquarters and came within a spear's length of killing the old man before falling beneath a forest of blades. When the smoke cleared, Osaka Castle was a pyre. Hideyori and his mother Yodo Jimi died inside, and with them died the last dream of the Toyotomi. The land fell silent. For 250 years, no army marched against Edo. The swords that had sung for a century and a half were sheathed, and the samurai, once wolves of war, became bureaucrats in silk. But that silence was purchased with rivers of blood, with the bones of 1,000,000 men whitening fields from Kyushu to Dua, with the ashes of castles that once touched the sky. That was the Sengoku Jidai, the age when every dawn brought a new battle, every dusk a new legend, and every name that survived became immortal.